I'm honored to introduce Dr. Hoysla N. Chanukya sir, expert for day 1, session 1, which is from 10:10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. today. Sir is Chief Research Scientist, ASTRA or Center for Sustainable Technologies, Indian Institute of Science. He is carrying out R&D on decentralized energy technologies, which are biogas plants and peripherals, and energy system integration into rural life. His R&D efforts are spread over 4 areas, namely biogas, decentralized sustainable rural energy, water purification, and appropriate agricultural technologies. To elaborate, under biogas, Sir's research includes semi-continuous solid-phase plug flow type biogas fermenters for herbaceous biomass. Then resource and cash recovery techniques from spent biogas plant feedstocks. Then biogas production from agro-processing waste like coffee pulping, small town sewage, and so on. Under decentralized or sustainable rural energy, Sir's research areas include microplanning, sustainable biomass energy, planning for villages to develop into total biomass energy villages. Under water purification, Sir's interests lie in low-cost, rapid fecal contamination test, low-cost drinking water purifiers with silvered surfaces, and so on. Under appropriate agricultural technologies, Sir's interests lie in participatory technology development in rural areas. We feel honored to have you with us as the expert for this session, sir. Once again, a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, the B.M.S family, especially my old friend, Dr. Puduswamy. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are very much audible.
Okay, I'll start sharing the screen as well.
Yes.
Oh, I should have known. How do I unshare the screen? In slideshow, okay.
Sir, there is a tab called share.
I have multiple screens, so that's my problem. That's my...
Maybe you have to share only one particular PPT screen.
Yeah. Now I'm sharing the right screen. No? You can see that?
Yes. Well, we can see your slides, sir. First, second slide we can see.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I was not aware that I'll be the first speaker, so I gave a more focused talk on value addition. But since you have had a very good introductory session and you've been exposed to the fact that our country has now started looking at very, very seriously into trying to find alternative energy options. One among which is the energy from urban solid waste and agricultural use. Very clearly in the north, where this is the season when paddy straw is being burnt and a lot of environmental issues. Imagine close to 40 million hectares are of paddy being burnt. That's the kind of biomass that we have. And also urban solid waste for a long time has been a major problem. Bangalore has always been in the news because most people in Bangalore are aware and they would like to have a better city. So there is a lot of reaction and activism from the population, and that is driving the city of Bangalore to make better and better waste management systems, especially trying to recover energy and value-added products. Why value-added products become important at this stage is one, as many of you may be aware, the cost of energy is rapidly falling, especially since if you have read today's paper and yesterday's announcement, We are trying to go, I think, up to 450 gigawatts of alternative energy installed capacity, which means the cost of power is going to come down. And whenever we make alternative energy sources, exactly like energy from waste and energy from agro residues, I wouldn't like to call agro residues as waste. Whenever we try to do that, the cost of power is going to be more than what is available from, say, solar. But what remains important is this country needs a mix of these sources. Obviously, in the night, you won't have solar power, and storing electricity is going to be a Herculean task. Consequently, it's important that we have a mix, and the major gap of renewable energy for the night and as a backup from solar would come from biomass. And this is very critical to understand. So what I'm going to share with you is my long journey, perhaps about 40 years in this field, trying to find, can we make urban waste and rural residues into something useful, energy. And very clearly, generating energy alone, which was the kind of theme, say, about 30 years back from these kind of bioresidues, is not going to be the future. You need to make a lot more value-added products. And like we say in our addressing environmental issues, we don't want to change one devil into a bigger devil. That means you create one you try to solve an environmental problem and create a bigger problem. So if we only look at energy and not look at the end products of these processes and try to create value and bring it back into economy, then we will have another set of waste that's coming in, and we don't know what to deal with it. One simple example is the fly ash in the coal industry. We need to look at something more important. Sorry, there is something. Okay. So what is important is that as we start growing as a population, we'll see that our consumption levels have started to increase, and consequently our production is going to increase. The moment you have more and more production, your levels of waste generation is also going to be high. And this is going to be a major threat to sustainability. The more you increase in the waste, more problems you have, and you're creating a large extent of environmental friction. The increased use of the typical problems that you see in the system is that we have, whatever system you want to adopt, you start using increased fresh water. So there will be a larger level of wastewater discharge. When you use higher levels of energy, the pollution loads in air, water, and soil is going to increase. And moment we start depending more and more on energy as in our daily life, our household consumption will increase. This is obvious to you, especially in COVID times. We are not traveling, but most of our interactions are now become on the internet, and consequently our system is going to be functioning most of the time. And as well as we'll consume a lot more packaging materials, so solid waste are going to come, plastics, foods, food waste. What will be surprising, as we'll see later on, today our major waste is not coming from these difficult issues, but more from food. We are wasting more food. And similarly, paper, mattresses, furniture, footwear, vessels and cutlery, all these are now going to our dump sites. So increased, and all around Bangalore, we are trying to bury it and gift it to our next generation. Perhaps we have to start thinking differently now. Waste has been very problematic, comes in multiple levels. One is our lifestyle, other is our aspiration as well. One of our major aspiration drivers is which leads to increased waste is the fact that we measure our success and achievement by comparing it to some other developed country. Like one of the typical indications that you will find is you will say Indian people, their wastes are very small. That means they're not developed. So you compare it Bangalore with New York. People in Bangalore per capita waste production is 0.5 kilos, and in say New York City is 2 kgs per day, which means they are developed. Your aspiration now becomes to reach that point, and ironically, that we end up generating more waste. I don't need to elaborate on this because the more you start ordering on the internet, the more is the solid waste that you're going to start generating. So we make this kind of funny comparison that, or back in the back of our mind, for some reason, we stuck that we have to waste something, then only we can show that we have progressed. So if you are very frugal, you are very careful and don't throw out any waste, your neighbors are going to laugh at you. See, they don't even waste anything. This will be the surprising thing that you'll find in the social construct, and this is also something that you need to break along with creating new technologies for this. So today you need to have a lower energy footprint and a lower water footprint. Consequently, your waste production, both the solid waste, wastewater, and other forms, including in agriculture, we had a large animal population. We had a culture of raising our own milk at homes. But today, milk and other meat. But today, we have gone into a different type of crops, and most of the agricultural residues are being burned because you don't know what to do, and you need the land for the next crop immediately. So these are the things that dictate how we need to plan into the future, how we need to look at how do we address or how do we capture the increasing waste generation and the composition of waste generation into our future. Some rules that we used yesterday are not going to be sensible. So we need something differently. One of the first things, obviously, is which everybody says is you reduce waste. Because the price of energy, okay, today there is a glut in energy, but slowly, if we start documenting the costs of decommissioning various of our energy treatment, energy product producing units, one simple example is the nuclear power systems. The cost of energy production through the nuclear system is much smaller than the cost of decommissioning. You have to look at it, you have to take care of it for hundreds of years. So the cost, if you add it today, future cost of decommissioning, then the cost of such kind of systems perhaps will start increasing beyond what and make it not very sensible to, or they would like to minimize this and keep it to a low level. The same thing may apply to the various solar systems that we are getting. We don't know how to decommission them, how to dispose them. And one of the things about learning to reduce waste, the peculiar thing that has occurred to most of us is the fact that in an industry system or in a business, most people have realized that the inputs are the ones that are most expensive. So if you reduce your energy, you reduce the water, reduce the quantum of waste that you need to manage, then you're increasing your profits. So lean manufacturing, clean manufacturing, these are and efficiency are becoming efficiency driven. So they automatically reduce waste. You don't have a factory in which there is something called waste. Most of it, very few production systems have something waste to dispose. I think somebody has a mic on. Request them to switch it off. Could the host identify who it is? Okay, thank you. So now it's now important that we do these kind of things even at this kind of efficiency measures, even at the individual household and the building level. People who live in apartments have now got the grip of trying to say how do we reduce, how do we reuse our waste, how do you reduce our waste, how do we bring it back into production, into some kind of like wastewater is it's compulsory for most apartments to treat wastewater and use a part of it on their landscaping. Something similar must be done with our waste as well. Even if we don't use it directly, if we can send it towards reuse and recycling systems, then we become more and more efficient. And this also reduce the burden of waste, and that becomes important. So in addition to making energy from the waste, we are also saying other revenue streams so that the waste does not become a burden. Waste becomes a profit center as well. So when we say solid waste, we end up in a very constrained frame of mind where moment you say solid waste and you start planning towards it, we break it down, we compartmentalize it into, okay, there is a generation stage, there's a collection stage, there's a transport stage, there's a processing stage, and the disposal stage. And you will find an expert for each of these segment, and they don't talk to each other. So this is the biggest problem that we have. So the collection system does not match with the transport system. The collection system does not ask, can you process something locally? Why do I need to transport it far? And when we mix up waste, this is one place where my good friend Jagannath from Mysore says, unity does not lead strength. That means if you mix up all the waste, then you're finished. You can't recycle it. So it's important to segregate in the generation stage. And once you segregate, they can enter various streams and get recycled. So this will add value to the energy generation part, which is the bulk of the waste, where the bulk of the waste will go. So you find, depending on the city and how it's progressed, collection cost is one of the largest. And of course, transport, disposal, and treatment, all these also add to the cost. And our costs almost match the same thing as in, say, the Middle East or in the West. We are also spending very close to between 2,000 and 4,000 rupees per ton, which is something similar that is being spent elsewhere in the world. Why is it that we can't make something better? So we need to offset these costs, one with energy, whatever we can extract energy, and another through value-added products that we can generate. In our case, either it's municipal solid waste or in agro-residues as well. So let's take a look at what is the kind of waste that we generate in a city and who generates what kind of waste. So if we did this exercise a little while ago, and these things have not changed much. Perhaps the green part, that is the fermentable part, has kept on increasing in spite of various changes in lifestyle. So what we see today, the major part of the waste in the city of Bangalore is about 3/4 is coming from fermentable material, that is putrescible and garden waste, and some amount of paper, cardboard, which also can be degraded or recycled depending on how badly it is, soiled. And if you look at from different sources, market waste is obviously very large decomposable component. And people who buy from the street vendors, where people are sitting, you see after the market is over, all the waste are there on the ground. Streets and parks, Bangalore is a large number of streets and parks, they also generate waste. But luckily today, this waste does not enter the major stream. They are now being treated in a decentralized manner. Very surprisingly, hotels and eateries also generate a large quantity of waste. If you end up seeing the waste being dumped there, you'll be surprised. And as you will see in the next slide, about 20% of Bangalore's garbage is coming from hotels and eateries, which means these people prepare these kind of waste and keep it ready for any customer to come. So when its life is over, entire large cans, I have seen 200-liter drums of tatte idli, 200-liter drum of paneer butter masala being sent back to waste treatment. I'm surprised that we have so much food to waste. And of course, in the residential segment, also you will see in your daily life, morning you're in a hurry, you have to rush, but your child is refusing to eat. You have two choices. You say, okay, I'll pack it and give it to you as lunch, which is a very difficult proposition to say. Or you say, don't worry, throw it, we'll go to school because I'm late. So most of these food obviously goes to the solid waste. And as you see in the next slide, these four components form more than 90% of our waste. And the slums and the trade come. Trade is a very important thing because in trade we generate a lot of solid waste, but most of it gets recycled. All packaging material, somebody buys it, takes it away. Polythene, any form of plastics are recycled. Bangalore is one of the largest plastic recycling centers in India. I think they have a capacity close to 3,000, 4,000 tons per day. So much of it gets recycled, although some amount of plastic still goes. And the slum, and this gives a much smaller footprint on the waste that we can see now here. If you look at the average composition, 72% at the household level, at the dustbin level at your house, you find a large part of it is food waste, which are fermentable, and a large part of it is paper, cardboard, and various forms of recyclable materials. This has not very marginally changed over a long period of time. So when you remove this, the paper and cardboard and the recyclables, the fermentable components rises to beyond 85%. And in rainy season, fermentable, it's more wet, and you find it also starts smelling. This was measured in 2005 as to trying to find out who contributes the largest to the waste system. The former chairman of the Pollution Control Board, Professor Sharad Chandra, and I managed to dig out various forms of data and mine the data to find out this number. About 55% comes from the domestic, 15% from the markets, 20% from the hotels and eateries. And this very clearly is 90%. So very clearly you see that if you address this at source or nearer the source, you are hardly going to send anything out to the dump sites. And it's not that people have kept quiet. There has been major attempts to collate waste from, have a separate channel of waste collections of hotels and eatery, because this is largely food waste. Either food that's coming from the plate, food that is left uneaten, and cooked food that cannot be served. All these put together. And these are very easily fermentable, and Bangalore has attempted various biomethanation plants because the moisture contents are very high. And similarly, cities like Pune and Hyderabad, Chennai also have introduced various, and various parts of Tamil Nadu have put in for this kind of waste, biomethanation plants. Many of them are successful, many of them are having a lot of operational issues, but not technology issues. So the question that comes is how do I think of economic sustainability and resource use efficiency when my waste has greater than 85% fermentable and 10% recyclable? Which means technically speaking, if we are careful, then this fermentable and recyclable can be completely recycled. And what is left to send to the dump sites are only 5%. This is what we can achieve if we strive to do it. So what we need today is to find a mix and in which we maximize local processing solutions so that very clearly waste go off to the channels which can be recycled. And if we can reduce the mix-up at the generation stage, then our waste to energy and value adding propositions can become very, very high. And this is what the city of Bangalore has been trying for the last 15 years, trying to make sure that the dry waste are collected separately and there is a materials resource recovery facility, what they call MRF or DRF, and that is separate. And the wet waste are now going away for treatment. Unfortunately, much of the wet waste are being treated by composting because we are still dated in terms of understanding what our wastes are. But very soon, it is likely that we will move to waste to energy from the fermentable material as well. And once the dry waste are taken away for recycling, we should be left with very little waste to manage. Now, when I asked this larger philosophical question as to how do I address economic sustainability and resource use efficiency, then the immediate question that comes to our mind is that what were we doing all these 2,500 years this civilization was this part of the world? If you dig up the past, you don't find civilizations where there are waste dumps anywhere. Why is that? If you ask this philosophical question, then you ask a second philosophical question that look, we have been eating food, so food waste must have been there. At least 25 years back, the people who are as young as I am would realize that 25 years back we really did not have food waste in the urban solid waste. It was a very small fraction. Major waste was actually house sweeping dust. So if you go back and see the composition which Neary did in the 90s, you find 46 to 50% as dust or inorganic matter, and rest found the household waste and other industrial waste. What was very clear is that if there was food left in the house, we had pets, and if it was in either smaller towns or peri-urban areas, we had larger animals it would take care of. Now, this is not possible in our modern society because we are living in apartments and we really can't raise a cow in the fourth floor. So what do? The challenge before us is then, can we innovate or invent a system that completely replaces the one that it was handling the fermentables and also bring back some culture in which we can recycle. This is the direction in which our philosophies are to be oriented. So this should shape the technologies that we deal. Then energy comes in very clearly because the moment you have you start looking at break down the costs. The energy cost of transportation is one of the largest. Energy cost of collection is going to be because we are using smaller vehicles. That's also going to be high. So household level segregation and recycling becomes the first choice. It's not that we are giving very philosophical things. These have been done for the last 20, 25 years in the city of Bangalore. Different parts, different levels of success. This is one in Rajmahal Villa somewhere around 2008. Vehicles would come with different compartments and they would collect them separately. Organic waste would be brought in separately and they would collect about 32 different recyclable materials. And what was not being recycled was sent for composting. Unfortunately, had they had an access to a biomethanation plant, then none of the ugliness of the solid waste also would have. What you see here surprisingly is that what we throw out as fruit peels also has a large value. Sometimes I used to make a joke that when you think you're looking a little older than your age, you go and have a facial. And guess what is the largest bag they put in is orange peel. And if you were to collect it and somehow send it back to making that, I'm sure you would have made a fortune only from various these kind of things. Of course, here we can use the orange peel into giving fragrances to all our daily oil products. And ash, coal, eggshells, everything had a market. With my friend Srinivas who was doing this and they tried a new method. The point I'm making is, even at this scale, you can dump in a lot of this loose waste, stand on it, bundle it, bale it, and then send it to various recycling units. So you could bale plastics, you could bale waste paper, you could bale newspaper. All of them go for some kind of value-added options. So if you were to look at a simple compost system, why energy becomes important is I am trying to bring that issue. Right? While the economics of recycling is very good, only making compost is not going to give us much output because most of our waste today, I repeat today, is food waste. So rice, dal, rotis, bread, sometimes even expensive things like pizza, all of them ferment away and leave very little as compost. Instead, in the past, when we had a lot of garden waste coming in, the compost recovery was 30%. Now you have something less than 5% as compost recovery. Compost cannot become a source of revenue in the emerging areas now. However, the plastics, glass, all these are now again fetching price. I think today you have so many plastic recyclers and technologies are emerging where you can make furniture from plastic. There's a small startup uh, in Bangalore itself which is making sheets from which school furniture is being made, especially from plastic, mixed plastic that too. And a couple of days back, you find an organization in Bangalore is making houses from waste plastic. It uses 4 tons of waste to make a house at the cost of 4 lakhs. Now, these are the kind of innovation that becomes important. So that value addition to this component of waste becomes high, and which augments the income that you can get from energy. So when you look at energy, I'll now move from value addition, emphasizing on value addition, to technologies that we have in this country for our type of waste. And I specifically speak about waste on the southern Karnataka and coastal Karnataka region because the food waste and the food garden and fermentable waste are a higher component. When you talk about energy recovery, when you talk about waste management system, please remember the food habits, the lifestyles, and the size of the city really matter. In a city like Bangalore, we have a lot of food waste. But when I go up north into cities like Raichur or Gulbarga, the food content comes down, the vegetable matter comes down. You have much drier waste. So you can't use a thumb rule for all the towns. And technology for energy recovery, as all of you would know, that any technology is scale sensitive. We have very rare technologies which are scale insensitive. And you have dry waste where you can straight away go for thermal routes and wet waste which require biological routes. Many a times in the state of Karnataka, many proposals have come for burning garbage. And most of you can go back with your high school knowledge of calculation and say that if you have 60% or more of moisture, then the energy cost of drying will be more than the energy that you recover in the form of heat when you burn it. So wet waste typically it would be ideal for you to go in for biological routes. And so what are the criteria? That's what I was trying to say. What is the kind of economic sustainability and what kind of resource use efficiency that you would like to put across. So when you are looking at very small scale, you can't put this resource use efficiency or economic sustainability very, very strongly because you'll be in the wrong economy, on the wrong side of the economy of scale. And you would be very sort of tempted to say, why don't I burn the waste and get rid of it? Because then I don't have anything to worry about. Honestly speaking, so much of experience has been there in India, especially when you are dealing with wet waste like in Bangalore or Mangalore or Mysore. The moisture content is beyond between 65 and 70%. So the organic fraction cannot be dried or burned. Second and most important point on wet waste being burned, organic waste being burned, is that our country spends a fortune on making or buying fertilizers, nitrogenous and phosphorus. And these waste are the ones that has the largest fraction of nitrogen and phosphorus, and this has to go back to soil. This is an important criteria based on which the Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court of India, has given the guidelines that wet waste should be treated in a biological route, so that the nutrient content of this can be recycled. Dry waste, yes, becomes easily amenable to thermal routes. But please remember, you might have a better recycling option compared to energy. So the first choice would be which is the best recycling option, then which is the best energy option that you have. So we have dry waste somewhere between 5 to 15%. So thermo-chemical routes like combustion, pyrolysis, gasification, synthesis, all these are in different stages of maturity. So you need to make a choice what might be only the economic. In I also spent some time with the B.M.P trying to figure out what might be the best waste management technology. So whenever BBMP has called for bids, the economic threshold for waste to energy, especially the dendrothermal, that is the combustion route, most of the times the players who were trying to bid come back and say that if the daily waste is in the range of 600 tons per day, which means we are now going to make about 10 to 15 megawatt hours of power, then it is economically viable to deal with. Otherwise, the scale, it becomes scale wise very uneconomical. So today, Bangalore is also trying to do from convert municipal solid waste into RDF and trying to create a 14 megawatt endothermal plant. The anticipated power cost is somewhere between 7 and 8 rupees per kilowatt hour. So this is what is something at this scale. Now, if you make the scale smaller, then your capital investment and your operation costs will go higher, and the 7 will become much higher. Let's go back to the waste because sometimes in a city like Bangalore, where we are on the coast, the rainfall is so high that for 3 or 4 months in a year or even longer, the moisture content in the waste is so high after you remove the recyclables that you have very little option of burning it. So just to support what is the calculation, you hardly get a self-combustion potential with a low calorific value of less than 1200. Combustion is also not permitted. So composting, biomethanation, bioethanol, algal biofuels, making solvents, bioplastics, these are the direction in which the world, the R&D is going. But biomethanation is more or less well established today. And sometime soon we may go into solvents like polylactic acid and bioethanol in the near future. So typically when you have dry waste, you look for a thermal route. At this scale, gasifications, at the small scale that we are dealing with, gasification seems to be the most economically viable. And as course, gasification, both for biomass as dry urban solid waste. So, this is a typical gasifier. Many of you are very familiar. But the issue that you need is that you need to densify it to a certain minimum density of 0.5 grams, and you need to have pellets of about 3 to 5 centimeter in size. What is critical is when you look at the scale on one side and the energy cost, you will find that at the small scale that we're dealing with in sub-megawatt range, gasification has the highest energy efficiency, and consequently, you will get a lot of better economics. Of course, converting this into hydrogen, into syngas, and other things for synthesis can also give you a much better option. Now, in gasification, formerly most people would have a syngas, clean it up because it's slightly dirty, and run a dual fuel engine. But now modern gas engines are running it. They're available in India, which can run only on syngas as a sole fuel. That's an important change that you have. And of course, low temperature applications like drying, furnaces, these also are going to yield a lot of economic value. So if you tie up gasification with not merely power generation, but also use of heat, then the value recovery from the same waste becomes much higher. And this is what I'm trying to say. A typical gasification train will have a gasifier and multiple levels of coolers, screening. You can extract some energy here. and of course run the engine, or you can run it for other synthesis and for biosynthesis or including hydrogen. Now the larger problem that we have is the wet waste, for which we need to look at biomethanation as an option. It's called by various names: biomethanation, biogas, biomethane, today compressed biogas, synthetic natural gas, all this. India has been a pioneer, which has made a large number of small and medium scale biogas plants, and the technology is there for over 100 years. When you say biogas, you typically look at an old KVIC cow dung based plant, which was developed somewhere in 1935 and popularized from 1960s. So you can use this kind of plant for food waste, but you can't use it for leafy material because the material starts floating. And of course, you can also have 100% gas engine, CNG engine, or a biogas engine which gets slightly derated CNG engine. So you can have at a small scale power generation becoming self-sufficient. Things like in apartments, so that what you have or left with is from a solid waste which stinks, you have a completely clean energy system, and the liquid that comes out can go back to the garden as a fertilizer. This is old knowledge, nothing great about it. But when you have leafy material that like banana leaves, banana frond, then you need a different technology. Such technologies are now already emerging. The plug flow reactor, you just dump whatever you have without any processing, without pulverizing, and it floats, but it moves horizontally, and you collect the gas in a bag. You can't have the storage, gas storage, and the gas digester in the same unit. So there are now modules which are available up to 5 tons per day, and you can have multiple modules for urban waste. One such system is there. This is a half a ton system in its Goa campus, which they use all their garden waste, mixed waste, garden and kitchen waste, and they collect gas which is used for cooking, and thereby their campus is clean. This is built in Infosys, again using the waste from Infosys Mysore food courts, and this is for coffee pulping. Similar technology, similar device structurally, but here agro waste water is passing through a biofilm based treatment plant where leaf material and fiber becomes the biofilm material for the treatment. And this technology is also very popular. It's very easy to now. You have a very small plant for equivalent of 25 tons of waste management. You can also push it towards the household size, household scale. This is a alchemy or what we call nanobiogas plant, is slightly bigger. So where you can combine, there are very large plants as well across the world. This is at Valorga in Amiens, France. You're talking about 200 tons. We also have a 180 ton capacity plant in Bangalore itself. I'm sorry I didn't put the picture in this particular talk. But most of them are producing somewhere between 150, around 150 normal metric cube per ton at a moisture content in the range of 20 to 25%. We have a similar plant in Coimbatore in Chennai, which is a modification of the plant by a modification of the plant by the what you call the B.M.S process, biogas induced mixing arrangement process. Waste from the market is picked up, and it is made into a small chutney and kept for a while so that it disintegrates. Once it disintegrates and becomes a nice solution, it is pumped up here, and you get biogas from such a plant. They have a large engine, 250 kilowatt engine, and a gas storage. Inside is a balloon, which goes up and down depending on how much it is filled. It is suspended from the top because when you have a balloon, you have a lot of animals which try to eat it up, squirrels, rats, so it doesn't touch the ground anywhere. And none of these animals can go up. So that's why they're hard to cover here. And these are typical natural gas engines modified. Now you get much better engines, much higher value. This was run for about 10 years. But the major revenue model here was that they would be selling it back to the electricity board. But strangely, due to their contract terms, they end up paying almost equal amount as fixed costs compared to what they recover from energy. And now you need a more imaginative revenue model. Now, the question is, yes, now such biogas plants, with all these pictures I showed, will convert the major 85 to 90% of your urban waste and a large part of your rural residue like paddy straw as well into biomethane, and you can generate energy. Now, this is more or less established. So the question that one is asking is, can I make this resource use efficiency a little more better? Can we get squeezed more so that our revenue streams increase, more people get employed, and we are sustainable? So typically, if you have a biomethanation plant where you have water and biomass or municipal solid waste or food waste, you mix these two and put it into plants, then you get biogas as output, digester liquid, which is the largest volume that you have. In modern day plants, this digester liquid is mixed in, put back, recycled back in place of water, so that your water footprint comes down and the process becomes a little faster. And you have digested residue as well. Now, these three can we find additional options to get more income. So what I'm showing is a small town which ran its biogas plant for quite some time, Siruguppa in Ballari. It recycled most of its removed all its plastic content. It collected mixed waste, started selling out whatever could be sold. So that way their inventory and storage volume was very, very less. The biogas plants were run for, they tried to sell the biogas plant, but it was too early in the day. But the digested residue was made into vermicompost and sold. Their cost was about 16 lakhs per annum in the whole system. 4 lakhs was recovered only from, equivalent was recovered only from this. Of course, there was no sale, but the value addition. Had they made some sale of biogas, as it's possible today, thanks to various policy issues, then this would have been a sustainable revenue model. So no doubt they won the national award for very innovative small town and waste management urban solid waste twice in the year 2009 and 2011. Now, let us see what happens if I change the composting to biogas. Now, today we can get a value of about 50 rupees per kg for the methane, compressed methane, which means from barely about 500 rupees, I get 2,500 rupees per kilo. So these kind of calculations you can always make. This would be location specific and cost specific. This is slightly dated. But if you add this and make this kind of a chart, you will find that if you add recycling and biomethanation, compressed biogas, then you have a revenue model functioning very close, even as low as 1 ton per day. So you have biogas plants now at various scales, and you can in what is happening in Kerala today is that the state is not collecting the wet waste. They were asked that the producers of wet waste should process it in their own house. So they either compost or they generate biogas. And so biogas has become very popular in Kerala, not because they want the biogas, but that was the only way in which they can process their waste streams in their houses without having any ugly situation. So this goes back into the kitchen, and they make at least an equivalent of one meal in a day with this kind of gas that they have. So coming back to this, I told that you have in mass terms in the digester, if I use agro residues as the input, then 1 to 3% of the solid mass ends up as lignin breakdown products, some bacteria and some NNP, NP and K in the digester liquid. Somewhere between 20 to 25% of the mass is converted to gas, and the remaining goes as solid waste, digested waste. So this is something that we need to look at what technologies are possible and how do we find ways to add value, because this gas is going to give us energy in either in form of compressed gas or in electricity. This I need to find a way. This also. What we have done at our center is been trying to see what all we can do. One of the interesting things is this digested mass, especially if you're dealing with residues from trees and from agro residues. Then the digested residue can be dried up in the sun, gets sun sterilized. Then if I add a little bit of compost, sorry, if I add some mushroom inoculum, then I have a lot of mushrooms growing on this. Remember, what could be digested and removed in the digester, what is left is lignin material and only mushroom fungi can. So here is a beautiful way in which you can generate mushrooms. And when you're growing mushrooms, if you sprinkle some water, I can also collect some enzymes from them and use this enzyme. So if I can have a market for these two, as I'll show you a little later, we can have a technology system in which the payback period is less than 1 year. So there are about 15 such options. I'll show you a few of them. So this is the digested residue that you see typically from a biomethanation plant that uses agro residues or herbaceous material as feedstock. Right in the sun, add some inoculum, within 21 days you get mushrooms. The same picture is here. So mushroom yields are 3 times more. So what happens? If you look at this kind of a value-added system, even at a very small scale biomethanation plant where you're talking about 30 to 40,000 rupees for the plant, your payback period is about 90 days, because this will give you a lot more income from mushroom than from the gas itself. Gas is going to replace your LPG. Now, if I'm using banana leaves, or we have a lot areca leaf, areca fiber, the same plant can be operated to produce fiber, 3 types of fiber, compost as well as gas. So then if I look at a mass balance as I see here, my payback period is less than a year. This is the kind of fiber I get from banana. Today banana fiber is becoming popular, but most of the banana fiber is extracted mechanically, but you can also do it by retting, and you get a much finer quality fiber as you see here. And I can also extract enzyme from this to polish that. So that enzyme plus that banana fiber which I saw here can become a very fine looking fiber which I can start selling at 200, 300 rupees a kilo. So I'm talking about making multiple value-added products from the same technology in addition to the energy flow. So what I would like to conclude today is that if you look at both the waste from the agro system as well as from the urban solid waste, we need to look at how do we go closer and closer to the the producer itself, so that we can recycle, we can push the fermentables to one route, biomethanation, and gasify the other, which can't be recycled. So at the end of the day, we have very little to send to the landfills. And as you might have seen in the news in the last 2-3 days, more and more recycled products are coming back in the market. I was telling boards from plastics, mixed plastics and films. Then even houses, house structures from waste plastics. You can also have all the road dividers, the park benches, everything made from recycled plastic. So you find that this system will use this recyclable 3 to 4 times before, after which, when you can't recycle, you can send it for gasification and thermal applications. What is important is that the Indian urban solid waste is unique and it changes with every city. You need to know what is the composition in your city and how it changes in the season before you think of making solutions. Yes, energy is an important route, but these two options depend on what is your composition and how well it is segregated upstream. One of the more interesting thing that is emerging is that the transportation cost is going to be very, very high and very, very troublesome. And there are no places where you can put these kind of waste treatment plants. So more and more, the urban local bodies are looking for decentralized solutions. And this is where biomethanation and small-scale gasification becomes very important. At some point, when the uh, opposition from the local people are becoming stronger and stronger, one typical Kerala experience that I like to say is that they've stopped taking fermentable waste and said it's your problem. So this is where we need to look at decentralized solutions which are more elegant, which are less odorous, and where we can show that this becomes an industry itself. So it's no longer a problem. It doesn't. I'm not worried whether my value of my house or site becomes less because next door is a waste treatment plant. I can't resell my house. Thank you very much. I thought I'll share some of the experiences, and I wanted to emphasize that yes, we are on the threshold where energy technologies are more or less getting very mature. You have many of them off the market, but if you want to make them viable, you also need to look at how do I create value-added products, and this will be unique to each city that you're going to deal with, each geographical situation. Thank you very much, and I'll stop sharing the screen. We can have a question answers.
Sir, I'm Dr. Chetan here. I'll just open the panel for any questions. CTP sir will be in a minute's time.
Yeah, I'm also looking at the chat box so that
Yeah.
If any questions are posed on that also, I'll answer them.
Yes, sir.
I hope I kept to my time. I kept 1 hour exactly, so that there will be enough time for talking, discussion.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much for your nice presentation, sir. And it was highly informative. And I'll request the participants, any questions can be typed. Actually, I requested, or in case they can unmute and speak also. I can unmute the participants. Any questions is there? Can please you can unmute and ask questions from the participants.
Sir, good morning, sir. I'm Dr. Geeta Bharati, pediatrician from Sri Shakti Institute of Engineering and Technology, Coimbatore. I would like to know how we are going to dispose these masks which we are using for COVID-19, sir. Is there any technique is there how we are going to dispose these masks, what we are using, the surgical masks?
Yeah, I understand. What is happening is what I spoke was something about urban solid waste, whereas the masks and the hospital waste come in another stream, which is regulated differently, called the biomedical waste. Most of the masks are incinerated today because nobody knows what might be the best option. Mask is the incineration is the safest option. So there is a very clear set of guidelines how you deal with biomedical waste. So you have a two-stage combustion process in which you have a minimum of 850 in the first stage and 1050 degrees Celsius in the second stage for 2 seconds. So you have burnt it completely and not produced any dioxin or furan. This is the way in which it is going today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
And this also is the guidelines, I think, sent from the center. So these masks are collected, especially from health workers, are collected separately.
Yes, sir. Because recently I have come across this question, and there is in Korea they have invented one method, pyrolysis, which they say which is better than what we are doing the incineration. So it is published recently in the paper. So that's what they were suggesting. This pyrolysis is better than incineration, sir. That's what I asked this question, whether we have that kind of method is followed in our country, sir.
Yeah, I'll answer that. Thanks for bringing out that. See,
Thank you, sir.
pyrolysis and gasification are, I showed you up in the thing, are very economic at a small scale. If you're
Okay, sir.
dealing with 1 ton, 2 tons per day size, then the machinery you require and technology you require is much smaller, and it become viable at this scale, at a 1 ton scale, 2 tons scale. So in a city like Coimbatore, I don't think more than 5 tons of this waste is coming on a daily basis. So incineration is not an economic situation. But as a response, when you don't have any other option,
Yes.
the simplest option would have been to incinerate it. And there you have solved the environmental and the risk problem without asking the question of economics. After 1 year, you can always look back and say, see, from hindsight, if I had gasified it or done pyrolysis, it would have been easier. That is that advantage you have from hindsight, because you know that in this mask there are no chlorinated compounds. Okay, so that definition, and you never anticipated that you will get it by the ton.
Okay.
The disposable mask. So from hindsight, we can always say, oh, that process would have been good. No, I can calculate. All of us go through this exercise, nothing unusual about it. That's what I pointed out in that. Thank you, Dr. Geeta.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Chanakya. This is Samita.
Oh, nice to meet you in a different environment location. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just wondering because usually our segregation at the source, when you are talking about banana fiber content, and we are usually not so much, giving importance to this other fiber contents, like, our day-to-day, waste is the solid waste that gets generated. We segregate at the source, which is like supposed to be, plastic and other things, but the biodegradable one, we don't segregate. So is there any advice from you that in order to reduce the handling cost, or in order to reduce the human intervention in this segregation, can we consider that we are made a little bit educated that what is the fiber content of this solid waste, and we can segregate at the source and make use of this for the future consumption as far as green energy is concerned? Professor.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I wanted it to emerge from the audience. If we have 2 million tons of 2 million hectares of banana cultivation in the country, and we have 100 tons. Somebody using 2 devices. Can you switch off one? Okay. So if you recycle this and make fiber, you can completely replace plastics for bags and any form of carrying material. You hit the nail on the head. So with a combination of polylactic acid and these natural fibers, we can make complete replacement for carry bags, which is the bane of our current lifestyle. And the same fabric can be used in other both industrial as well as domestic fabric things, and replace many of the synthetic ones, because this lasts a long time. Yeah, you're right that we have to now move and see how best we can create our collection system without getting into problems of difficult problems of not able to dispose. Thank you, Dr. Samita Mehta.
Yeah. Thank you. Actually, our information and the knowledge about these polylactates, which are now becoming first, biopolymer, which probably we should make more emphasis upon. And thank you for taking, that part also now. I hope that we will be able to come back to you, and let's, we will be able to improve our, the way we deal with even our day-to-day teaching. We do not cover this particular section. We tend to go into conventional, polymers, but this is time that we slowly shift to a biodegradable and consider the strength that is already lying into the system. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor
Thank you.
Chanakya.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Putsami, there are some questions now on
Yes,
the
sir.
chat box.
Yes, sir.
Can
Yes,
I
sir.
answer them? Okay.
Yeah. Please go ahead, sir. There is a one K.T. Murli. He has asked a question. Dear sir, how segregation household waste and agriculture waste and how much energy can be derived effectively?
Okay, that's a very large number. And perhaps, see, more than energy in terms of electricity, you have to distinguish now. Our country is trying to see whether agro residues can be converted to methane, which will replace transport fuels, and both in rural areas as well as in urban areas. So there's a collection mechanism made. Government has given a support price of close to 46 or 48 rupees per kg of methane. It will buy. If you are less than 5 tons per methane, then you can come and supply to any of the oil marketing companies. If it is more than 5 tons, they will come and buy it. So this kind of policy initiative has been brought in thanks to Niti Aayog and oil manufacturing companies coming together. So this is called now compressed biogas, and it's not called compressed natural gas. So this also has no excise on this. This is also an incentive. So whoever produce methane from agro materials or from urban solid waste, there is a guaranteed buyer and there's a guaranteed purchase for 15 years with a necessary escalation in cost. So this is the incentive that you have. And the gas that comes from urban solid waste or from agro residues are the same. Both are biogas, where you remove the carbon dioxide, enrich it to 92% methane, and make the same. You have to compress it. I think this is the question that was asked. I hope I've answered that. Thank you. There is one question on industrial solid waste. Please remember one thing. And industrial wastes are dealt on a case-to-case basis. So when you deal with the Pollution Control Board or some similar, when you get a license for establishment, the treatment system is also more or less established based on the typical waste that is generated at the industrial level. They will not get mixed with urban waste or agro waste, with one or two exceptions where you're dealing with the sugar industry waste, where again biogas is produced in large quantities. They're also moving to trying to see how do we sell this gas back into the gas grid. And that answers one question. Last question is that can you suggest any funded project on waste management related with machine learning technology? Now, I'm sorry, I am not very familiar with ML, but I think that's the direction in which we are all going, trying to optimize the process as well as production and sales and management of these systems. So ML will become an important part in the solid waste management system over a period of time. And the dream of having an intelligent segregation system has not worked across the world. And the ones that have been tried, it works very, very slowly, so it's not economically viable. And if that is ML, that component you're looking for, I'm sorry for saying waste management is no such segregating machine for typical urban solid waste. And we Indians have a great capacity of putting curd rice in one plastic packet and chapati in another and something else in the third one. There is no way ML as it stands today can distinguish these three and set it in the right bin. Okay.
On whether you see any position as to whether any movement towards trying to change the existing reverse supply chain to enable, for example, RWAs or other bodies that management some viable volume because they have higher capacity for it's complicated, requires higher management. You've seen in drive and TFT or
no, there is a clear mandate that the BBMP has told that the bulk producer have to deal with the waste themselves, and this is the law, national law. It is not just the BBMP that is pushing it. Okay, so the moment you are a bulk producer, and the definition of bulk producer has shifted slightly from 10 kgs to 100 kgs today. So anybody producing more than 100 kgs of solid waste has to manage their own waste in their own premise. This is the national law of the nation. Okay, so there are technologies available. Unfortunately, there is an inverse law here, or rather inverse square law, if you ask me, that the more educated you are, the more resistant you are to change. Normally, you would have thought that the more educated you are, you will understand technology, you will appreciate it and take it without too many questions. But my experience has showed that more educated your community is, the greater is the effort that you have to convince them. Of course, in the end, all of them come down when they know that this is the law and you can't change it. The resistance is higher when you are educated. Why can't we do that? Why can't we do this? And in Bangalore, unfortunately, most people who are accessing internet get carried away by things that are not appropriate to our country. So they would look at a very nice, rosy picture of some place where they would give the ugly details. And they'll say, okay, if they can do it, why can't we do it like this? Why can't we burn off our garbage? Why can't we do this? So this is a problem. We as a society, this is not a technical issue. This is an issue of how people think, how our society is constructed. And that you have to really struggle hard to change. Because our ability to collectively solve a problem, especially things like waste, especially in a housing colony, especially in an apartment block, which are diverse people, it takes a long time for them to set in place. You need a very key anchor person who can take all this criticism and still manage to do this. So then only these things happen. And this is where pioneers are required. And you have to handle the system for at least 10 years before this becomes a success. I have one more question. Food waste is critical in our country. Can generate energy separately. Yeah, that is true. Food waste, ironically, should not be wasted in the first place. If you can avoid food waste, it's a wonderful thing. But if you are in a system that food waste is something that you can't avoid, biomethanation is the simplest answer you have, and you can recover many products in that. That's an easy option. And there's nothing complicated in a biomethanation plant. It doesn't require great intelligence to run a biomethanation plant. Our country has run it for 100 years. It's just that you just follow the standard SOPs, standard operating procedures. Nothing can go wrong. There are so many million plants working without involvement of technologists or scientists in this country. I'm sorry, I'm saying that as a technologist myself. I think the questions are slowly coming. Okay, there are hill areas. There's one in hill areas. Okay, yeah, there is normally if you hit the internet, you will say that biogas plants will not work in hilly areas. The correct answer to your question is that if the digester temperature falls below 12 degrees or 12 to 14 degrees, then your gas production falls. Just up to half of that. Up to some 10 degrees, you can, liquid temperature. Please don't take the air temperature or the lowest point in the day. Take the average water temperature. If in your area, the water temperature is not lower than 10 degrees, then biogas plant will work. You simply have to oversize it for winter. That is a small extra capital cost. Otherwise, there's no problem. Only in the permafrost area where temperature is very low for a long time, then the biogas plant stops working. The moment the temperature rises, it comes back to working. One of the advantages of biomethanation plants is mostly it is built underground and it is insulated from the daily fluctuations of temperature. So it will follow the mean monthly temperature inside the plant. And if the mean monthly temperature, average hourly temperature is not lower than 10 degrees, then you have safely run a biogas plant. I have built biomethanation plants in Chikmagalur, in Kodagu, and the foothills of Ooty, and they still work. There's no issue about it. That answers the question on hills. And if I have left out any question, you can please unmute yourself and ask.
Dear participants, if you have any questions, you can unmute and ask. Sir, actually, there is one person asked actually regarding what is the method to use for industrial solid waste actually. I also answered whatever I felt. Maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Industrial solid waste, if you have a food industry waste, like say you're making ketchup and you have fruit peels, you're bottling gherkins, so you have rejects and you don't want the flies to come. Yes, biomethanation plant is an excellent idea because you don't get fruit flies coming into your production site. And so if your industry is making fermentable material, then nothing like a biogas plant, because you will be having it in a wet condition, and the best way to treat it without causing any environmental pollution is to carry out the biomethanation plant, treat the water and reuse the water back into the production system. This works very good, very well. Many people have been doing that. Where you are working with, say, pharma, where you're working with issues where toxicities are involved, then biomethanation is not an ideal option, not because you can't make biomethanation. You will not know how to dispose the waste that comes after. I hope I've answered it. Thank you.
Sir, actually, we need to share the PPT. Maybe you can convert it to PDF.
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you.
Either through WhatsApp or whatever.
I'll send it to you by email.
Yes.
It's little big. That's about 4 MB.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
You can convert it to PDF and send it, sir.
Yeah, I'll do that. So, thank you, Dr. Putswamy. Catching up with you after a very long time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It was really an honor, sir, to have you as a first speaker, and thank you very much for your time. I know you are very busy and you are occupied with so many other official works. Actually, in spite of that, you are considered our request and you are presented and you have shared your rich knowledge with our participants. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate for all your concern for the environment, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Now. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Shamita.
Thank you. Thank you, Jan.